Captain Varix Thun squinted at the main view screen of the galactic survey vessel Distant Thunder. The blue-green orb suspended against the void of space looked deceptively peaceful. "So this is the fabled Earth," he said, his four nostrils flaring with curiosity. "Doesn't look like much, does it?" First Science Officer Melaragen stepped forward, her slender frame casting a long shadow across the bridge. "Appearances can be deceiving, Captain. According to ancient records, this planet was once home to one of the most dangerous species in the galaxy. Humans." Virex pronounced the word with a mixture of reverence and skepticism. "Been extinct for what? 3,000 years now?" 3,246 standard cycles, to be precise, Melara replied, tapping on her datapad. "After the Great Calamity, no transmissions were ever detected again. The Galactic Council quarantined the entire system and designated it a historical preservation zone." Virex drummed his three-fingered hand against the armrest of his command chair. "And yet here we are, breaking a 3-millennium quarantine on orders from the Council themselves. Funny how things change." "Resources change everything, Captain," said Chief Engineer Drac Pavo from his station. His bulbous eyes protruded from his skull as he analyzed the incoming sensor data. "The preliminary scans confirm it. This planet contains the largest deposit of neuranthium ever recorded. With current shortages threatening the stability of the quantum network, the Council had no choice." Virex nodded, understanding the gravity of their mission. Neuranthium was the only element capable of sustaining the quantum entanglement that allowed for instantaneous communication across the vast distances of the Galactic Federation. Without it, civilization would fracture, possibly beyond repair. "What about the quarantine regulations? The warnings about biological contamination?" asked Lieutenant Zara Voss, their young security chief. Her scaled skin glistened under the bridge lights as she nervously checked her weapons. Virex laughed, a harsh sound that echoed across the bridge. "You worry too much, Voss. Nothing survives a nuclear winter combined with a gamma-ray burst from their sun. The humans destroyed themselves, and nature finished the job. This is nothing more than a tomb raid." "A tomb with very valuable treasures," Melara added, her eyes gleaming with scientific curiosity. "Besides the neuranthium, think of the knowledge we might recover." Humans were primitive, but innovative. They developed technologies along completely different lines than the rest of the galaxy. "Right," Virex said, standing up with a decisive gesture. "Prep the landing shuttle. Standard archaeological protocol. We will set down near the highest concentration of neuranthium readings. Milare, you are with me. Drac, you too. Bus, assemble a security team, just in case." "In case of what?" Zara asked. "You just said nothing survived." Virex grinned, showing his sharp teeth. "In case we need someone to carry the heavy stuff." The shuttle broke through Earth's atmosphere with minimal turbulence. Virex peered out the viewport at the landscape below. Vast cities stretched across the continent, their structures remarkably intact despite the millennia of abandonment. "I expected more destruction," he murmured. Melara nodded, equally puzzled. The records indicated global nuclear exchanges followed by an extinction-level solar event, yet much of their infrastructure appears intact. "Maybe humans built things to last," suggested Drek from the pilot's seat. "Or maybe the records were wrong," Zara said, checking her pulse rifle for the third time since departure. "Easy, Lieutenant," Virex said with a smirk. "The only things waiting for us down there are dust and echoes." The shuttle descended toward a massive structure near what appeared to be a former population center, surrounded by sprawling ruins. The building stood out for its remarkable preservation and unusual design, a perfect dome of smooth, dark material that reflected no light. "That's our target?" Virex asked. "Yes, Captain," Melara confirmed. "The neuranthium readings are off the charts. This structure wasn't in any of our orbital surveys from 3,000 years ago. They built it after we stopped watching," Druk suggested. "Their final act before extinction." "Interesting theory," Virex mused. "Set us down in that clearing." The shuttle landed with a soft thud on a cracked concrete expanse that might once have been a transportation hub. As the engines powered down, an eerie silence enveloped them. "Atmosphere is breathable," Melara announced after consulting her instruments. "Nitrogen-oxygen mix. Slightly higher oxygen content than galactic standard. Minimal radiation. No detectable pathogens." "Convenient," Zara muttered, still skeptical. "Science beats superstition." Lieutenant, Varric said as he donned his expedition gear. Let's move out. Stepping onto Earth's surface felt oddly anticlimactic to Varric. The air was clean, with a crisp quality that felt refreshing in his lungs. The gravity was slightly stronger than he was accustomed to, but not uncomfortably so. Spread out, he ordered the team of 12. Standard search formation. Document everything, touch nothing without clearance. They moved toward the mysterious dome structure, traversing the ruins of what had once been a thriving human city. Vegetation had reclaimed much of the urban landscape, with trees growing through buildings and vines strangling metal frameworks. Look at this, called one of the junior scientists, pointing to a partially buried sign, some kind of written language. Melara approached and brushed away the dirt. Our translation algorithms should be able to decipher it. The galactic archives contain extensive samples of human communication. The sign came into focus. Denver Central Transit Hub. Denver. The Rex pronounced the word carefully. Must be the name of this settlement. More like a major city, Melara corrected. According to historical records, Earth had thousands of cities before the calamity, with populations in the millions. Millions in a single city. Zara sounded incredulous. How did they manage resources? Poorly, Drax said with a laugh. Hence the extinction. As they continued toward the dome, Rerix couldn't shake a growing sense of unease. Does anyone else think it's strange that there are no remains? No skeletons, no evidence of panic or disaster? Perhaps they had time to evacuate, Melara suggested. To where? The historical record shows they never achieved interstellar travel, Varric countered. Maybe they buried their dead, Zara offered. Many species have ritualistic disposal methods for corpses. All 7 billion of them? Varric shook his head. Something doesn't add up. They reached the base of the dome, which towered nearly 100 meters high. Its surface was completely smooth, made of a material that defied easy classification. No visible entrance, Drac observed, running a scanner along the structure. But the neuronthium readings are strongest here. There must be tons of it inside. Melara approached the dome wall and cautiously placed her hand against it. To everyone's surprise, it yielded slightly to her touch, like a membrane rather than a solid surface. Fascinating, she whispered. Some kind of responsive material, perhaps nanotech-based. Can we cut through it? Varric asked. Druk produced a molecular dissection tool from his kit. This should do the trick. Stand back. The engineer activated the tool, which emitted a focused energy beam designed to separate molecular bonds without generating heat or radiation. To his surprise, the beam simply disappeared into the material without effect. That's impossible, Drac muttered. Adjusting the settings, this tool can cut through anything. Evidently not, Varric said dryly. Try something else. As they debated their next move, Melara continued to examine the dome's surface.
Captain,
Look at this, she called. When I apply pressure in certain patterns, the material responds differently. She demonstrated by pressing her palm flat against the surface, then tracing a simple geometric pattern where her fingers had touched. The material glowed faintly. It's an interface, she realized. The dome was designed to be opened. By humans, Varric said. Can we determine the correct pattern? Melara thought for a moment. If I can access the Galactic Archives section on human biology, perhaps I can replicate a typical human handprint. She consulted her datapad, scrolling through anatomical records of the extinct species. 5 digits, with complex whorls on the fingertips called fingerprints that were unique to each individual. Using this information, she programmed a holographic projector to create a simulation of a human hand. When she pressed this against the dome's surface, a larger pattern of light spread outward from the contact point. It's working, she exclaimed. A seam appeared in the previously seamless material, widening into an archway large enough to admit them. Beyond was darkness. Well, Varric said, activating his light source. Let's see what secrets the humans left behind. The interior of the dome was not what any of them expected. Rather than a storage facility or bunker, they found themselves in what appeared to be an enormous control center. Rows of workstations surrounded a central platform, all covered in a fine layer of dust but otherwise perfectly preserved. This technology, Drac whispered, examining one of the consoles with reverent fingers. It's unlike anything in our records. The humans were far more advanced than we thought, but still not advanced enough to save themselves. Zara pointed out, remaining vigilant despite the empty chamber. Melara approached what appeared to be the main control station. The neuranthium readings are coming from below us. This facility must extend underground. Can you get any of these systems operational? Virex asked Drak. The engineer studied the alien interface. Possibly their technology uses different principles, but I might be able to supply power compatible with their systems. While Drak worked, Virex explored the chamber. Noting the ergonomics designed for human physiology, everything was built for beings slightly shorter than himself, with interfaces meant for their five-fingered hands. "Captain, look at this," called one of the security team members. He was pointing to a wall displaying what appeared to be a timeline, with images and text chronicling human history. Melara joined him, her eyes widening as she translated the final entries. "This changes everything we thought we knew about the humans." "Explain," Virex demanded. "According to this, they weren't wiped out by the calamity at all," she said, her voice trembling with excitement. "When they detected the incoming gamma-ray burst from their sun, they went underground. This facility is one of thousands built around the planet as shelters, but we detected no life signs." Zara argued. "For 3,000 years, nothing. Because they put themselves into suspended animation." Melara continued reading. "This is incredible. They developed a technology to essentially pause their biological processes until the planet recovered." Virex felt a chill run down his spine. "Are you saying there could be humans still alive somewhere beneath us?" Before Melara could answer, Drak called out from the main console. "I have managed to interface with their power systems. Basic functions are coming online now." The chamber hummed to life, lights flickering on after millennia of darkness. Displays activated, showing status reports in the human language that their translators quickly converted. "By the void," Drak gasped, staring at the readings. "Captain, there are life signs. Thousands of them, directly beneath us." A mechanical voice suddenly filled the chamber, speaking in an alien tongue that their translators rendered in real time. "Reactivation sequence initiated. Caretaker protocol engaged. Detecting non-human biological entities. Security countermeasures standing by. Shut it down." Virex ordered, suddenly alarmed. "Drak, shut everything down now." "I can't," the engineer replied, frantically working the controls. "The system is automated." The voice continued. "Awakening Lazarus Section 1. Emergency protocols activated due to external interference. Estimated time to first revivification, 15 minutes. A new display activated, showing a massive underground complex extending kilometers below their position, level after level of what appeared to be suspension pods, each containing a single human form. "We need to leave," Zara urged, raising her weapon. "Captain, we should return to the ship and contact the Council." Virex stood frozen, torn between fear and curiosity. "The neuranthium," he murmured. "We still don't know where it is or how to access it." "I think I do," Melara said, studying the facility schematics now displayed on the main screen. "It's not a natural deposit at all. The humans created it, synthesized it somehow. These readings suggest they are using it to power their suspension technology." "That's impossible," Drak protested. "Neuranthium can't be synthesized. Every laboratory in the Federation has tried and failed. And yet," Melara gestured to the displays, "here it is. The humans figured it out 3,000 years ago, before going into their long sleep." A new alarm sounded, and a section of the floor began to retract, revealing a platform rising from below. On it stood a single suspension pod, its transparent surface clearing to reveal its occupant. "First Guardian approaching surface level," announced the mechanical voice. "Prepare for diplomatic contact." The pod opened with a soft hiss, releasing a cloud of vapor. As it cleared, they saw its occupant, a human, opening its eyes for the first time in 3 millennia. The human was female, according to their biological records. Tall for her species at nearly 1.8 meters, with dark skin and a close-cropped cap of silver hair. She wore a fitted uniform of an unfamiliar design, with insignia that suggested authority. She blinked several times, focusing first on the aliens before her, then on her surroundings. Rather than showing fear or confusion, she merely sighed. "Well," she said in a voice rough from disuse, "you folks certainly aren't what I expected to see first thing in the morning." Her translator rendered her speech perfectly, suggesting the facility had already analyzed their communication systems. Virex stepped forward cautiously. "I am Captain Virex Thune of the Galactic Federation survey vessel Distant Thunder. We came seeking neuranthium deposits." The human woman nodded, stretching her limbs methodically. "Director Amara Jackson, Earth Defense Initiative. And yes, I imagine you would be interested in our neuranthium. It's become quite the commodity out there, hasn't it?" Her casual knowledge of galactic affairs stunned them all into momentary silence. "How could you know that?" Melara finally asked. "Your species has been in suspension for over 3,000 years. Director Jackson smiled, a gesture their xenobiological databases identified as indicating amusement rather than aggression. "We have been asleep, not deaf. Our monitoring systems have been passive, scanning all communications in this sector since the calamity. We know exactly who you are and what's been happening in our absence." "Impossible," Drax sputtered. "Your technology couldn't possibly have been that advanced. And yet, here we stand," Jackson replied, stepping off the platform with surprising steadiness for someone recently revived from suspension. "Though I must say, we expected first contact to be a bit more official. A survey team hunting for resources isn't exactly the diplomatic delegation we were hoping for." "You have been waiting for contact?" Vorigz asked, increasingly bewildered. "Of course," Jackson said, approaching a console and activating it with a practiced gesture. The gamma-ray burst was devastating, but temporary. Earth's surface became habitable again approximately 500 years ago. We could have emerged then, but we decided to wait. "For what?" Zara asked, her weapon still half-raised despite the human's non-threatening demeanor. "For the right moment," Jackson replied cryptically. "Humanity needed time to reconsider our place in the cosmos. The calamity wasn't just a natural disaster, it was an opportunity for reflection." She turned back to them, her expression now serious. "But I'm being rude. You came for neuranthium, and here I am philosophizing. How much do you need?" The question caught Virex off guard. "The Federation requires significant quantities. The quantum network that binds our civilization is failing without it." "Yes, quantum entanglement communication. Primitive, but effective." Jackson nodded. "We moved beyond that particular technology about a century before the calamity, but we maintained production capabilities as a contingency." "Moved beyond?" Drac couldn't contain his scientific curiosity despite the surreal situation. What could possibly be more efficient than QEC? Jackson smiled again. "That's a conversation for another time with proper representatives. For now, let's address your immediate needs." She turned to another console and entered a series of commands. "I'm authorizing a goodwill shipment of 50 metric tons of refined neuranthium. Consider it a welcome-back present from humanity to the galactic community." 50 tons. The amount was staggering, enough to sustain the Federation's network for decades. Waterex struggled to find words. "That's extremely generous." "It's pragmatic," Jackson corrected. "We are about to re-enter galactic politics after a very long absence. Making friends seems wise." A rumbling sound from deep below suggested large machinery coming to life. "Your shipment is being prepared now," Jackson continued. "Meanwhile, I should inform you that the revival process has begun for our diplomatic corps and leadership council. Within 48 hours, Earth will be ready to receive official Federation representatives." "How many of you are there?" Melara asked, her scientific mind racing with implications. "Here at Denver Prime, about 50,000. Globally, approximately 1 billion humans remain in suspension, distributed across 4,000 facilities similar to this one." 1 billion. The number hit Virex like a physical blow. Not an extinct species, but a dormant superpower with technology possibly exceeding the Federation's own. "I should contact my superiors," Virex managed to say. "Of course," Jackson nodded. "Your communication systems are compatible with our facility. I have taken the liberty of boosting your signal strength so you can reach your vessel in orbit." As if on cue, Vervax's communicator chimed with an incoming transmission. "Captain," came the anxious voice of his bridge officer, "we are detecting massive energy signatures activating all over the planet. Thousands of locations going hot simultaneously. What's happening down there?" Jackson smiled at Virex's obvious discomfort. "That would be the global revival protocol initiating. Right on schedule. Captain, the bridge officer continued, we are also detecting approaching vessels, coming in fast from the outer system. Vessels? Varix turned to Jackson, alarmed. What vessels? The human director said, checking a display. That would be our orbital defense fleet, returning from the Jupiter shipyards. They have been on standby, waiting for the revival signal. You have a fleet? Zara exclaimed, her weapon now fully raised. Jackson gave her an amused look. Lieutenant, I suggest you lower that weapon before our security systems interpret it as a threat. And yes, we have a fleet. Did you think we'd leave ourselves defenseless after waking up? The records said humans never achieved interplanetary travel, Melara argued. The records were incomplete, Jackson replied simply. We kept certain capabilities understated. A precaution that seems prudent, given you have arrived to essentially raid what you thought was our tomb. Varix felt the situation spiraling beyond his control. We meant no disrespect. The Federation believed your species extinct. No offense taken, Jackson assured him with surprising equanimity. 3,000 years is a reasonable time to assume someone's dead. But humanity has always been stubborn about survival. She gestured to a large display showing Earth from orbit. Thousands of points of light were now visible across the planet's surface, facilities awakening from their long dormancy, and approaching from the outer system, a formation of vessels that dwarfed the distant thunder. Now then, Jackson said, her tone shifting to brisk efficiency, let's discuss how to handle this situation diplomatically. Our Federation clearly needs our neuranthium. We are willing to supply it, along with other technologies that might interest you. In exchange, we will need assistance reintegrating into galactic affairs. You are proposing an alliance? Varix asked, struggling to keep pace with the rapidly evolving situation. I'm proposing a conversation, Jackson corrected. One that should probably involve your superiors and ours. The shipment of neuranthium will buy us time for more substantive discussions. A section of walls slid open, revealing a cargo area where crystalline containers were being loaded with a glowing blue substance. Even from a distance, their instruments confirmed it was the purest neuranthium any of them had ever seen. How? Drac whispered, staring at the impossible bounty. How did you synthesize it? Jackson considered him for a moment before answering. Engineer Pivot, isn't it? The Federation's understanding of particle physics has always been constrained by certain assumptions. Humans approach the problem differently. We don't synthesize neuranthium so much as cultivate it. Cultivate? Like a plant? Melara asked incredulously. More like a crystal, though the analogy isn't perfect, Jackson explained. We create the conditions for it to grow naturally rather than forcing its creation artificially. The distinction matters. A musical chime sounded, and Jackson checked another display. The Council is awakening. Perfect timing. She turned back to Varix. Captain, I suggest you contact your Federation leadership immediately. Inform them that humanity has returned and is eager to establish diplomatic relations. And if they are concerned about your sudden reappearance, Varix asked carefully. Jackson's expression hardened slightly. Then remind them that we control the galaxy's only sustainable source of neuranthium, and we are willing to share it generously with friends. The implicit threat hung in the air for a moment before her expression softened again. But I'm sure it won't come to that. Cooperation is always preferable to conflict. Don't you agree? Before Varix could respond, a series of new suspension pods emerged from below, each containing humans in various official-looking attire. The awakening had truly begun. Jackson gestured toward the neuranthium shipment. Your cargo will be ready for transport within the hour. Consider it a down payment on a productive relationship between our peoples. As the new humans began to stir in their pods, Varix realized that the galaxy had changed irrevocably in the span of a single hour. The Tomb Raiders had unwittingly awakened a sleeping giant, one armed with technologies beyond their understanding and resources they desperately needed. Director Jackson, he said finally, on behalf of the Galactic Federation, I accept your generous offer and will convey your message to my superiors. Excellent, she replied with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Welcome to Earth, Captain Thune. Humanity looks forward to rejoining the galactic community. As Varix watched more humans emerging from their long slumber, he couldn't help but wonder if the Federation was truly ready for humanity's return. These weren't the primitive creatures of their historical records, but something far more advanced and calculating. They had opened Earth's tomb, and humanity had answered not with the whimper of a dying species, but with the confident declaration of a civilization that had merely been biding its time. And now, the waiting was over. The Galactic Council chamber buzzed with agitated voices. Representatives from over 200 worlds had assembled for this emergency session, many traveling for days at maximum warp to attend in person rather than via holographic projection. The significance of the situation demanded physical presence. High Chancellor Tevasar Duke, a wizened figure with translucent skin that revealed the pulsing of his 3 hearts, called for order by striking his ceremonial staff against the chamber floor. The reverberating tone gradually silenced the assembly. "We will have decorum," he announced. His voice amplified throughout the vast circular hall. "This council has faced many crises in its 10,000-year history, but few with such profound implications for our shared future." Captain Varix Thune stood at the center of the chamber, feeling uncomfortably exposed under the scrutiny of the galaxy's most powerful leaders. 2 weeks had passed since the awakening of humanity, and he had been summoned to provide a first-hand account of the encounter. "Captain Thune," the Chancellor continued, "you have submitted your report on the Earth expedition. While comprehensive, certain aspects require clarification. Please elaborate on your assessment of human technological capabilities." Mervax cleared his throat. "Chancellor, esteemed council members, I want to emphasize that our interaction was brief and limited primarily to one facility and one human representative. That said, what I witnessed suggests technological development far beyond our historical records of their civilization." "Be specific," demanded Councillor Zyrol Kor, the militaristic representative from the Brunari hegemony. "Could their capabilities pose a threat to Federation security?" "They synthesize neuranthium," Varix stated bluntly, "or as they describe it, cultivate it. This alone represents a technological achievement our greatest scientists have deemed impossible. They also maintained a surveillance network that monitored our communications for 3 millennia, while in suspended animation, and they apparently possess an interplanetary fleet that our intelligence networks never detected." A murmur rippled through the assembly. "And you delivered them intelligence about our neuranthium shortage?" Kor pressed, mandibles clicking in obvious displeasure. "They already knew," the Rex replied defensively. "Their monitoring systems had been passive scanning our communications. They were aware of the Federation's dependency on neuranthium for the quantum network." Chancellor Arduk raised a hand to forestall further accusations. "The question before us is not Captain Thune's conduct, but how we respond to humanity's re-emergence." "Ambassador Lyra, your analysis." A tall, elegant figure rose from the diplomatic section. Ambassador Lyra Thal, whose species communicated through color patterns that rippled across their skin, activated a translator before speaking. "The diplomatic corps has reviewed all available data," she began, her skin shifting through thoughtful blues and greens. "Our preliminary assessment is that humanity represents both an unprecedented opportunity and a potential destabilizing force in galactic politics. The 50 metric tons of neuranthium they provided as a goodwill gesture exceeds the Federation's annual production. If a steady supply could be negotiated, it would revolutionize our economy and communications infrastructure, and make us dependent on them," Kor interjected. "A species that deceived us about their own extinction." "They did not deceive us," Lyra corrected, flashing irritation in orange ripples. "They simply went dormant without announcing their intentions to a galactic community that had shown little interest in their world. A quarantine of their system after the gamma-ray burst was a unilateral decision. A quarantine they apparently bypassed with their fleet," Kor countered. Varix shifted uncomfortably as the debate continued around him. Something had been bothering him since his return from Earth, a detail from his conversation with Director Jackson that seemed significant. "If I may, Chancellor," he interrupted, surprising himself with his boldness. The chamber fell silent, all eyes turning to him. "There's a point I believe merits consideration." When discussing their technology, Director Jackson mentioned that humanity had moved beyond quantum entanglement communication about a century before the calamity. This suggests they developed superior communication technology over 3,000 years ago. The implications hung in the air. "If true," the Chancellor said slowly, "what other advancements might they have achieved before their long sleep? And what might they have developed during their isolation?" This is precisely why I advocate caution, Counselor Core insisted. We should deploy the fleet to secure the Sol system until we better understand their capabilities and intentions. A military response would be disastrous, Ambassador Lyra countered, her skin now pulsing with alarmed reds. The humans have offered cooperation and trade. Threatening them could provoke the very conflict you claim to want to prevent. Perhaps, suggested a new voice, you should ask us directly. All eyes turned toward the chamber entrance, where a delegation of 5 humans now stood. At their center was a familiar figure, Director Amara Jackson, now dressed in formal attire that suggested diplomatic authority. Apologies for the interruption, she continued, her voice carrying effortlessly across the stunned chamber. We received your invitation to address the Council 2 days ago and made haste to arrive on time. Your security protocols are quite thorough. We have been waiting in the antechamber for nearly an hour. Chancellor Arduk recovered his composure quickly. Director Jackson, we had not expected your delegation for another week. Our fastest ships require at least 9 days to travel from Earth to Galactic Central. Jackson smiled politely. We have made some improvements to propulsion technology during our isolation. Nothing revolutionary, just refinements to existing principles. Refinements that had apparently halved the travel time considered possible by Federation science, Virex noted. The casual way she dismissed this achievement spoke volumes. The Council acknowledges the delegation from Earth, the Chancellor announced formally. Please, approach and be recognized. Jackson and her companions moved to the center of the chamber, taking positions near Virex. She acknowledged him with a subtle nod before addressing the assembly. Esteemed representatives of the Galactic Federation, I bring greetings from the United Earth Government. After 3 millennia of absence, humanity is eager to rejoin the interstellar community and contribute to our shared future. A future you prepared for quite thoroughly, Counselor Core remarked dryly, with hidden fleets and secret technology. Rather than taking offense, Jackson laughed. Counselor, when you go camping in dangerous woods, do you leave your valuables in plain sight? Humanity entered suspended animation during a time of crisis. Uncertain what we would find upon awakening, prudence dictated certain precautions, such as developing the means to synthesize neuranthium. Ambassador Lyra asked, her skin now displaying curious swirls of purple. Among other things, Jackson confirmed, though as I explained to Captain Thune, we don't synthesize it in the conventional sense. Would you be willing to share this technology? The Chancellor asked. Jackson exchanged glances with her colleagues before responding. That would be one option on the table for discussion. We have prepared several proposals for the Council's consideration, ranging from simple trade agreements to comprehensive technology exchanges and mutual defense pacts. Mutual defense? Core questioned skeptically. Against whom? The Federation maintains peace across 80% of the galaxy. One of Jackson's companions, a broad-shouldered man with features suggesting adaptation to high gravity, stepped forward. Admiral Victor Petrov, Earth Defense Fleet, he introduced himself. Counselor, while your Federation has indeed maintained admirable stability within its borders, our monitoring systems have tracked developments beyond your explored space. There are entities approaching from the galactic rim that may pose challenges beyond your current capabilities. This revelation sent a fresh wave of murmurs through the chamber. What entities? Demanded the Chancellor. We call them the Void Collective, Petrov replied grimly. A synthetic organic hybrid civilization that consumes resources and incorporates useful biological traits into their collective consciousness. They have been moving methodically inward from the rim for approximately 500 years, assimilating or destroying every sentient species in their path. And you know this how? Core challenged. We have been watching, Jackson said simply. Our suspension technology required only minimal maintenance systems to remain operational. This freed considerable computing resources for long-range monitoring and analysis. We have maintained automated observation posts beyond the Federation's borders since before our hibernation. If such a threat exists, the Chancellor said carefully, why have our own monitoring systems detected nothing? A third human, a woman with striking amber eyes and copper-colored hair, addressed this question. Dr. Ileana Novak, Quantum Physics Division. Your detection systems rely primarily on gravitational distortion and electromagnetic signatures, correct? The Void Collective utilizes what we call dark propulsion, a method of travel that generates minimal signatures in those spectrums. Without knowing precisely what to look for, your systems would interpret their movements as background noise. The technical explanation delivered with casual expertise further underscored the apparent gap between human and Federation science. If what you say is true, Counselor Core said, his tone slightly less hostile, why wait until now to warn us? Why not emerge from your hibernation when you first detected this threat? Several reasons, Jackson replied. First, the surface of Earth remained uninhabitable longer than anticipated. Second, we needed time to rebuild and prepare. And third, timing is critical. The collective was still too distant to pose an immediate threat. Had we emerged too early, the warning might have been dismissed or forgotten. We calculated that this moment, when the Federation faces a neuranthium shortage that we can resolve, would create the optimal conditions for a productive alliance. Calculated, the Chancellor repeated, a note of weariness in his voice. You speak as if your entire species' reemergence was timed specifically for maximum leverage. Not leverage, Chancellor, impact. Jackson's expression remained pleasant, but her tone hardened slightly. Humanity has no desire to dominate the Federation or disrupt the peace you have built. But neither will we emerge as a minor player petitioning for scraps at the table of galactic politics. We bring valuable resources and knowledge that the Federation needs. We ask only for equal partnership in return. And if we decline, Carr asked. The fourth human, an older man with dark skin and silver hair at his temples, spoke for the first time. Then we would respect your decision, Counselor. Earth can sustain itself independently if necessary. We would maintain cordial relations and limited trade while focusing on preparing for the Void Collective alone. Though I suspect the neuranthium shortage might make that position difficult for the Federation to maintain. The implied leverage was obvious, yet delivered without overt threat. Ambassador Solomon Gray, he introduced himself belatedly. Forgive my directness, but clarity serves us better than diplomatic obfuscation at this juncture. Chancellor Arduk studied the human delegation thoughtfully. You present us with extraordinary claims and an offer that appears too convenient in its timing. The Council will need verification of this Void Collective threat before proceeding with any formal agreements. Of course, Jackson nodded. We have prepared a comprehensive data package detailing our observations and analysis. We also invite Federation scientists to inspect our monitor facilities and review the raw data personally. The fifth human, who had remained silent until now, produced a small device and placed it on the chamber floor. It projected a holographic display of the entire galaxy, with a spreading darkness visible along one edge of the outer rim. Senior Analyst Trevor Hakim, he introduced himself. This time-lapse shows the collective's advance over the past 5 centuries. At their current rate of expansion, they will reach the outer colonies of the Federation within 15 years. The display zoomed in, showing the methodical consumption of star systems in vivid, horrifying detail. The collective doesn't conquer in the traditional sense, Hakim explained. They harvest resources, technology, biological material, anything useful is absorbed and repurposed. What remains is left barren. The chamber had fallen completely silent, all eyes fixed on the projection. We awakened now, Jackson said into the silence, because this is when preparation must begin if the Federation is to survive what's coming. 15 years is barely sufficient time to adapt your technology, retrain your military forces, and fortify your borders. With your help, I presume? Counselor Core asked, though his usual hostility had diminished in the face of the evidence before them. With mutual cooperation, Jackson corrected, humanity brings certain advantages to the table. Neuranthium production, advanced propulsion, and weapon systems developed specifically to combat the collective. The Federation offers numbers, infrastructure, and established governance across a vast territory. Together we stand a fighting chance. Divided, we both fall. Chancellor Arduk looked troubled. This council will need time to verify your information and deliberate on your proposals. Of course, Jackson agreed reasonably. We anticipated this. As a gesture of good faith, we have brought an additional shipment of 100 metric tons of neuranthium to address your immediate needs while discussions proceed. The casual mention of such an enormous quantity, enough to supply the Federation for a century at current consumption rates, elicited gasps from several council members. And what do you ask in return for this gesture? The Chancellor inquired. Observer status in the Council during deliberations, access to Federation star charts to update our navigational databases, and permission to establish embassies on key worlds, Jackson replied promptly. Basic diplomatic courtesies. Nothing more. Ambassador Lyra's skin displayed patterns of cautious optimism. These seem reasonable preliminary terms. I would support granting them while we verify the information provided. As would I, added another counselor, surprising many with his support. Representative Jor Valen of the Mercantile Consortium rarely supported any proposal that didn't directly benefit trade, if the humans can indeed produce neuranthium in the quantities suggested. Stabilizing the quantum network alone justifies interim cooperation. The Chancellor looked around the chamber, gauging the shifting mood. Very well. Without formal vote at this time, I propose we accept humanity's good faith offering and grant their requested preliminary considerations, while this Council reviews the information regarding this void collective. Is there significant opposition? Councillor Core looked as if he might object, but after glancing again at the holographic display of the advancing darkness, he remained silent. Then it is decided, the Chancellor declared. Director Jackson, the Federation welcomes humanity's return and accepts your initial proposals. We will convene a special committee to review the information regarding the Void Collective and your technological offerings. Jackson bowed slightly. The United Earth government appreciates the Council's wisdom. We look forward to productive collaboration. As the formal proceedings concluded and the chamber began to empty, Virex found himself approached by Jackson. Captain Thurn, she greeted him with what appeared to be genuine warmth. I must thank you for your accurate reporting of our encounter. Many in your position might have embellished or distorted events to shift blame. Virex shrugged uncomfortably. I simply told the truth. A rarer commodity than neuranthium in political circles, Jackson observed with a wry smile. I believe we interrupted you earlier. You were about to make a point about our communication technology. Virex blinked in surprise. You were monitoring the council session before your entrance. Force of habit, she admitted without embarrassment. 3,000 years of passive observation makes active surveillance second nature. That doesn't concern you? Virex asked. That your tendency toward surveillance might reinforce suspicions about humanity's intentions. Jackson considered this. A fair point. Perhaps old habits need re-evaluation in the context of open diplomacy. But to address your earlier observation, yes. Humanity developed alternatives to quantum entanglement communication before our hibernation. We found its limitations restrictive. What limitations? QEC is instantaneous across any distance. Instantaneous, yes, but inherently point-to-point, Jackson explained. Each pair of entangled particles can only connect two locations. Your network requires vast numbers of entangled particles distributed physically across the galaxy, with complex routing systems to maintain connectivity. It's elegant, but fundamentally inefficient. And you have something better, Virex stated. Not quite a question. We developed what we call subspace resonance communication. Instead of paired particles, SRC creates a field effect that allows any device within the network to communicate with any other, regardless of distance or relative position. No routing, no physical distribution of entangled particles, just direct connection. The implications were staggering. Such technology would revolutionize not just communication but navigation, sensing, possibly even weapons targeting. And this is just one of the technologies you are offering to share? Virex asked. One of many, Jackson confirmed. Though some will require more extensive cultural preparation before introduction. We have learned from our own history that technological advancement without corresponding ethical frameworks can lead to complications, like self-extinction? Virex suggested pointedly. Jackson laughed. We came closer than I'm comfortable admitting, but that's precisely why humanity might be valuable to the Federation now. We have faced our demons, Captain. We have had 3,000 years to reflect on our mistakes and determine better paths forward. Sometimes the best guide is someone who's already found all the pitfalls by falling into them personally. Before Virex could respond, Ambassador Lyra approached them, her skin displaying friendly patterns of blue and gold. Director Jackson, the diplomatic corps would be honored if you and your delegation would join us for a more informal discussion. Of course, Ambassador, we'd be delighted. Jackson turned back to Virex. It seems duty calls, but I suspect our paths will cross again soon, Captain. Perhaps next time under less dramatic circumstances. As Jackson departed with the ambassador, Virex found himself joined by Counselor Kor, whose mandibles were now set in a pensive configuration. "Your thoughts, Captain?" the counselor asked. "You have interacted with them more directly than anyone else here." Virex chose his words carefully. "I believe their offers of assistance are genuine, Counselor, as is the threat they have revealed. But I also believe they have calculated every move with precision. Their reemergence, their initial contact, even the specific technologies they have chosen to reveal first. There's a thoroughness to their planning that I find both impressive and somewhat unsettling." Kor clicked his mandibles in agreement. "They present themselves as returning friends bearing gifts, yet they come armed with fleet capabilities we cannot match and technologies we cannot duplicate. Would you prefer they came defenseless?" Virex asked. "Of course not. In their position I would have done the same." Kor's compound eyes fixed on the retreating forms of the human delegation. "What troubles me is not their preparation, but the fact that they seem to have anticipated our every reaction. It suggests they understand us better than we understand ourselves." Virex recalled Director Jackson's words about humanity's long period of reflection. Perhaps that was part of their evolution during hibernation. "They studied us while we forgot about them. A concerning asymmetry of knowledge," Kor observed, "yet their neuranthium alone makes rejecting their overtures impractical. And if this void collective is real," he left the thought unfinished. "I believe it is," Virex said with conviction. Something in their demeanor when discussing it. There was genuine concern there, not political calculation. Kor considered this. "Then we face an intriguing scenario, Captain. We need humanity's resources and technology to survive the coming threat, while they need our established infrastructure and territorial reach to mount an effective defense. Mutual dependence may be our best safeguard against any hidden agendas." "A pragmatic assessment, Counselor. I wouldn't have expected it from you." "I am military, not stupid," Kor replied with unexpected humor. "The Federation will adapt to humanity's return, as it has adapted to every challenge in its history. But we would be wise to proceed with both gratitude and vigilance." "On that we agree completely," Virex said. As the council chamber emptied, Virex lingered, his thoughts returning to that moment inside the Denver facility when the first human awakened from 3 millennia of slumber, not with confusion or disorientation, but with calm preparedness for exactly what she found waiting. The Tomb Raiders had sought resources and found instead a sleeping giant, one that had apparently been watching through barely open eyes all along. Now that giant was fully awake, extending a helping hand that might be friendship, necessity, or calculated self-interest. Perhaps all three. The galaxy had changed irrevocably the moment they breached that dome on Earth. For better or worse remained to be seen, but one thing was certain: humanity had returned to the cosmic stage, not as supplicants or refugees from a failed civilization, but as potential saviors bearing gifts of incalculable value. They had opened Earth's tomb expecting only echoes of a vanished species. Instead, humanity had answered the call with technologies beyond imagining and warnings of dangers yet to come. The Federation, with all its power and history, found itself in the unexpected position of student rather than teacher. And somewhere at the galaxy's edge, an implacable enemy advanced, unaware that its carefully calculated conquest now faced an unforeseen complication: the return of a species that had used 3,000 years of isolation to prepare specifically for this confrontation. The cosmic game had acquired a new player, one that had spent millennia learning the rules while everyone else had forgotten they existed. Now humanity was back at the table, offering partnership while revealing only carefully selected cards from what was clearly a very substantial hand. As Virex finally left the chamber, he couldn't help wondering how many more surprises Earth's awakened children had yet to reveal, and whether the Federation was truly prepared for the full implications of humanity's return. Only time would tell if they had awakened allies or something far more complex. A civilization that had transcended its violent past, or merely mastered the art of patient, meticulous planning on a timeline that spanned millennia rather than years. Either way, the galaxy would never be the same again. They had opened Earth's tomb, and humanity had answered with a voice that echoed across the stars, announcing not its demise but its transformation. The sleeping giant had awakened, and it had been dreaming of the future all along.